Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Asphalian's webinar on Vigilance MD PSURs for medical device. What is expected by the notified bodies? Before starting, just a couple of things to take into consideration about the webinar. The webinar will last approximately 30 minutes. In case you have any questions, please submit them in the chat and we will answer them later per email. Also, we will send you the presentation as well as the link to the recording in the coming days. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Vanessa Palau, Drug Safety Officer at Asphalion. Vanessa has a degree in biochemistry by the University of Barcelona and a PhD in medicine by the Autonomous University of Barcelona. At Asphalion, she's involved in conducting, monitoring, and analyzing the post-market surveillance activities. She has experience both in the pharmaceutical industry and in scientific consultancy. In today's webinar, Vanessa will provide tips and essential information about how to prepare PSURs for medical devices according to Article 86 of the current regulation and based on guidance MDCG 2022-21. So Vanessa will take it from here. Vanessa, please, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Lydia, for the presentation. Good afternoon to everybody. As Lydia mentioned, this webinar will be focused on the new guidance that has been published recently by the Medical Device Coordination Group regarding the sections that a PSUR for medical devices should contain to be in line with the legal requirements of the Medical Device Regulation. By way of introduction, the Periodic Safety Update Report has been introduced in Article 86 of the Medical Device Regulation, which entered into force in May 2021. The MDCG Group, which is the Medical Device Coordination Group, published in December 2022 this guidance on PSURs to assist manufacturers to implement the legal requirements laid down in Article 86 of the Medical Device Regulation. And the main objective of this guidance is to help manufacturers to prepare a more consistent, standardized, and systematic review of all post-market surveillance data from Class 2A, Class 2B, and Class 3 medical devices. It is important to mention that this guidance is applicable to medical devices which are currently in the market and certified under the Medical Device Regulation. However, it also applies to all medical devices that are actually on the market but certified under the old Medical Device Directive. Therefore, the only medical devices that are excluded from these requirements are those devices which have stopped being placed on the European market before the application of the Medical Device Regulation, which is before the 26th of May of 2021. Therefore, actually, there are coexisting two different types of devices on the market, which are legacy devices, that are those devices placed on the market under the old Medical Device Directive, the MDD, and MDR compliant devices, which are those devices placed on the market under the new Medical Device Regulation certification. So, according to Article 83 of the Medical Device Regulation, manufacturers of Class 2 and Class 3 must prepare a PSUR for their devices, and concretely for Class 2A medical devices, a PSUR should be prepared at least every 2 years, while for Class 2B and Class 3 medical devices, a PSUR must be issued at least annually. Therefore, the only manufacturers of Class 1 medical devices are exempt of PSUR preparation. Focusing now only on legacy devices, which are those that are on the market but certified under the old directive, for this kind of PSURs, manufacturers should make the PSUR available to notified body and competent authorities only upon request. On the other hand, for MDR compliant devices, the frequency for issuing the PSURs is the same as for the legacy devices. That means every 2 years for Class 2A medical devices and at least annually for Class 2B and Class 3 medical devices. However, the main differences between the legacy devices and these MDR compliant devices is that PSURs for implantable devices and Class 3 medical devices that are under MDR should upload the PSURs to EUDAMED, which is the European database for medical devices, and also notified bodies will add its PSUR evaluation through EUDAMED. Instead, for Class 2A and Class 2B non-implantable devices, the PSUR should be made available to notified bodies and competent authorities only upon request, which is the same situation as we saw previously for legacy devices, and that means that for non-implantable devices, no submission through EUDAMED is required. Then, when does the data collection period starts for a PSUR? There are different possibilities according to the certification of the devices. For example, for new devices that are only certified under MDR, the starting point for the data collection period is based on the date of certification. On the other hand, for those legacy devices that are on the market under MDD certification, but that will become MDR during the transition period, we have two possibilities. If no previous PSUR has been prepared, the starting point for the data collection period will be the certification date of the MDR. However, if a previous PSUR has been issued, the data collection period should start at the end of the data collection period of the previous PSUR, so that there is no period of time left between PSURs. And for legacy devices that will not become MDR certified during the transition period, the data collection period should start at the date of application of the MDR, which, as I previously said, was 26th of May of 2021. However, it is important to mention that in exceptional circumstances, these dates may be changed based on agreements between the notified body and the manufacturers. And obviously, the date agreed with the notified body should prevail over the dates stipulated in this guide. Following a PSUR is required throughout the lifetime of the device, and the lifetime should be understood as the time period specified by the manufacturer in the device documentation, during which the device is expected to be safe and effective for use. Then, when a PSUR is not longer required, according to the medical device regulation, when the last manufacturer device of the device model is not longer placed on the market and the intended lifetime of that device has been achieved. So, to understand it a little bit better, if we focus on the diagram on the right of the slide, if the medical device is certified under MDR or MDD and it's not longer placed on the market, we have to check if the previous PSURs have covered the entire lifetime of the medical device. Then, if the lifetime is covered, the obligation for PSUR preparation stops and manufacturer doesn't have to present any PSUR for the medical device. Now, let's focus on the PSUR template proposed by the MDCG guidance and that can be useful for manufacturers when preparing their PSURs. First of all, the PSUR has to have a cover page, which should include all relevant data to allow distinguishing between the different updates of the PSUR. So in this cover letter, we should include manufacturer information, at least name and contact address, also which is the medical device covered by the PSUR, the notified body name and organization number that will review our PSUR, the PSUR reference number, which should be assigned by the manufacturer, the version number of the PSUR to maintain the traceability of the document, the data collection period covered by the PSUR, and a table of contents. And here it's important to mention that PSURs submitted through EUDAMED, that if we remember are those devices certified under MDR and should be implantable devices or Class 3 medical devices. For these devices, we don't need to prepare a cover page, and instead a PSUR form should be filled when submitting the PSUR through EUDAMED. This PSUR form is, you can find it in Eudamed's webpage, is what is now showing the screen, and it contains the same information as the cover page, but a little bit more detailed. Following to the cover page, an executive summary should be included. This executive summary should provide a brief overview of the PSUR content and a conclusion in relation to the benefit risk determination of the medical device. So here we will include a brief description and status of all actions taken by the manufacturer during the reporting period and based on previous PSURs. Also, a brief description and status of actions taken by the notified body as part of the review of the previous PSURs. In case that the data collection period is changed by the manufacturer, that means that, for example, for Class 2A medical devices, the PSUR should cover a period of 2 years. So if for any reason manufacturer decided to change this collection period, the justification should be included here in the executive summary. And finally, the main results of the current PSUR should include a clear statement declaring if the benefit risk profile of the medical device has been impacted positively or negatively, or if it remains unchanged. And the guidance provides us an example of this statement that can be used, and that says that based on the analysis of the collected data, it is concluded that the benefit risk profile of the device has not been or has been adversely affected or remains unchanged. And following the executive summary, a description of the devices covered by the PSUR and the intended uses should be included. And this section is intended to provide an overview of all the devices included in the PSUR. So here we will include the device classification according to the risk class. That means if it is a Class 2A, Class 2B, or Class 3 medical device. At least one of the following dates: the first declaration of conformity, the first certificate issued, the first date device market, the first placed on the market, or the first put into service if it is a software, which is the current status of the device, if the device is still on the market, if it's not longer placed on the market, if it's recalled, or if field safety corrective actions have been initiated during the reporting period due to safety reasons. And finally, but not less important, the intended uses of the device according to instructions for use, if there any indication or contraindication of the medical device, and obviously the target population of the device. After that section, we will have to include a justification for grouping of the devices, if applicable. It is worth mentioning that according to the medical device regulation, a PSUR should be drawn up per device. That means that each PSUR should cover one basic UDD. However, in some cases, manufacturers could consider the possibility of including in the same PSUR a category or group of devices, which means that multiple basic UDDs will be included in one PSUR. In case of grouping the devices in the same PSUR, the following information should be included. The manufacturer should justify why he's grouping the devices in one PSUR. This justification could be based on the benefits of reporting multiple devices in one PSUR or the disadvantages of reporting each device in a separate PSUR. Also, in case that the group of device is changed according to previous PSURs, justification should be included in this section. And finally, and very important, the manufacturer should define always the leading device according to which the PSUR schedule is determined. For example, when we are including in the same PSUR different devices with different risk class, the leading device must be the device with the highest risk class. Following this section, information regarding the number of sales during the reporting period should be described. The manufacturer should consider all devices placed on the market, providing volume of sales, units shipped, units implanted in case of implantable devices, and any other suitable indicator for representing the number of sales. Importantly, the manufacturer should provide accurate information regarding the number of sales, and if possible, the data should be presented by year to year. This is an example of table provided by the guideline that can be used by manufacturers to describe or detail the number of sales of a medical device per year and country. And finally, the manufacturer should try to provide as much as information as possible of the volume of sales in respect to the different sizes, models, and configurations of the device whenever possible. After the volume of sales, the manufacturer should try to estimate the size and the characteristics of the population using the device, and this means to evaluate how many patients have been exposed to the medical device and the characteristics of these patients. Here again, you can see an example of table that the guideline provides us to try to represent and estimate the number of patients exposed to the device year to year and also by country. And it's very important to estimate the number of patients because not always the number of sales correlate directly with the number of patients exposed to the device. For example, there are active devices that have a long lifetime with multiple uses every day, which results in a high number of patients exposed to a single device. And on the other hand, we have, for example, implants where multiple devices will be used in one single patient. So it's very important that the manufacturer characterize correctly and try to estimate as accurate as possible the number of patients exposed to the device in order to avoid overrepresentation or underrepresentation of the patient groups that could be clinically relevant for the safety of the product. Whenever possible, the demographic aspects of the patient should be taken into consideration and described in this section. And also finally, when applicable, the manufacturer should evaluate the effect of any change detected during the reporting period as in comparison with previous PSURs, and a justification of this change should be stated here in this section. And after estimating the number of patients exposed to the device, it's time to include all data collected from the post-market surveillance activities. First of all, vigilance data will be included, which consists on information regarding serious incidents, field safety corrective actions, trend reporting, and CAPAs. The data could be presented in table, figures, or text format, wherever is better for the manufacturer to represent the data. And importantly, here is that data regarding serious incidents should be reported using the IMDRF adverse event terminology instead of MEDRA. And the aim is to present these serious incidents from 3 different perspectives, which are the device problems, the root cause of the incidents, and the health effect of these incidents on the people using the device. Following this section of serious incidents, the manufacturer should include information regarding trend reporting. Here, the aim is to summarize if there has been a significant increase in frequency or severity of any non-serious or expected undesirable side effects during the reporting period. It's important to mention that there is not so much information regarding trend reporting in this guidance because the MDCG group is planning to prepare and publish a specific guideline focused on trend reporting. So probably we will have to wait until this guidance is available to have a little bit more information about how to represent data from trend reporting in the PSURs of medical device. Following the trend reporting, the manufacturer should include a section for field safety corrective actions, which, as we know, are all those actions taken by the manufacturer to reduce the risk of death or seriousness deterioration of patients' health, which is associated with the use of a medical device that is placed on the market. So here the manufacturer will have to list all field safety corrective actions implemented during the reporting period and try to compare this information with that stated in previous PSURs. Here again, you can see a table that can be used to list all these field safety corrective actions. And finally, also a section for preventive and corrective actions should be included. Here, the aim is that the manufacturer provides a list of all CAPAs implemented during the reporting interval. And here is an example of table that can be used to show all the CAPAs implemented, where the information that should be included is the type of action, the date of initiation, the scope and the status of the CAPA, the manufacturer reference number, a description of the CAPA, a root cause, and the effectiveness of this CAPA if it has been closed during the reporting period. After that, two sections focused on clinical data should be included, which means all information gathered from post-marketing clinical follow-up activities. First of all, we will include a general section to describe all clinical data obtained from feedbacks and complaints from users, distributors, or importers. Also, any clinical data obtained from the scientific literature review of relevant specialist or technical literature, any clinical data from public databases or registry data, also any relevant information about similar medical devices that could be of interest to determine the benefit risk profile of our medical device, and any other clinical data from any other data source that could be relevant for the PSUR of the medical device. Finally, a more specific section to include a summary of the findings generated from the analysis of specific post-marketing clinical follow-up activities, and these include any findings from post-marketing clinical follow-up studies that have been conducted during the reporting period, and always and when available, the conclusions documented in the post-marketing clinical follow-up evaluation report, to allow for a comprehensive assessment of the specific post-marketing clinical follow-up activities that the manufacturer has performed during the period covered by the PSUR. To finalize with the PSUR, the last section should include a summary of findings and conclusions. Here, the manufacturer should consider the validity of the data collected, should also include a conclusion on the benefits and risks of the device, and add any action taken for safety reasons during the reporting period. So, starting with the validity of the data collected, the manufacturer should identify any limitation of the data that has retrieved from the reporting period, and consider if these limitations could impact or not the availability to formulate meaningful conclusions, and if an impact assessment on the overall benefit risk profile is still possible. The manufacturer should also outline any new or emerging risk identified during the reporting period, providing information on the seriousness and full potential clinical impact of these risks. The manufacturer should also describe any new benefit identified during the reporting period, and obviously a conclusion regarding the benefit risk profile of the device, if it has been changed or not, and in case of change, if this change is positive or negative for the safety of the device. And finally, a description of all actions taken by the manufacturer during the reporting period to address any new identified or emerging risks. So all these sections that we have seen here today are at least the sections that a PSUR for a medical device must include to be in line with the requirements stated in the medical device regulation. To finish with this presentation, we wanted to compare the sections included in a PSUR of medical devices and a PSUR of medicinal products to analyze the main differences between both types of PSURs. So starting with the common sections, we can see that the PSUR cover page and executive summary are two common sections between both types of PSURs. Also, the information regarding the medical device, the description of the medical device and the intended use is a common section and could be similar to the sections regarding introduction and worldwide marketing authorization status included in a PSUR for medicinal products. Following with common sections, also the information included regarding the volume of sales and the patients exposed to the medical device or the medicinal product. Also, the literature sections are similar between both types of PSURs. And finally, the summary of findings and conclusions of a PSUR for medical device could contain similar information to that stated in the benefit risk analysis and conclusion sections of a PSUR for medicinal products. So therefore, the sections that differ most between both types of PSUR are those destined for the description of the safety data. These include the Vigilance and CAPA information and the post-marketing clinical follow-up information, which are sections specific for medical devices. So we will find it only in a PSUR for medical devices and not in a PSUR for medicinal products. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for your attention and participating in today's webinar. Now,
Good afternoon, everyone. So to wrap up the webinar, I would like to remind you about our MedTech services, which covers, as you can see, all the life cycle of the devices. Either if you are developing a new medical device or you have a larger portfolio of products, we can support you since the definition of the regulatory strategy and the pathway to the CE marking in Europe and approval in the US, including feasibility assessment and classification of the product throughout all the development until the regulatory maintenance of the product in the market. Specifically for post-market surveillance and vigilance, we count on a dedicated unit that can support you to understand, as Vanessa just did with PSURs, the new requirements for PMS and vigilance according to the regulation, and also supporting you to define and maintain the PMS system and the daily activities of vigilance of the medical devices. So if you need support with the preparation and update of the vigilant documents, such as the PMS plans or reports or PSURs, please do not hesitate to contact us and we will be more than glad to assist you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Vanessa, for this great presentation on PSURs, and thank you to all attendees. We hope you enjoyed the webinar. As we said, we will send you the presentation shortly, and remember that if you have any further questions, you can send them to info@asphalion.com. Have a nice afternoon, everyone. Thank you.